Good evening. Hi, take a seat. If you can you hear me? If you can squeeze in at all, please do, whatever that means to you. There's some chairs down here in front for those of you who don't have seats. Okay. The theme of tonight's event is definitely think globally and make art locally. Before we hear from your Summer Common Reading author, Bloodroot will open with a couple of songs. Bloodroot is indeed a group rooted in Michigan. Elisabeth Pixley-Fink is a singer, lyricist, composer, pianist, and guitar banjo player. She graduated from Smith College with a degree in government. Her tour on behalf of her album, Say Yes to Yourself, took her from Maine to Mexico and all places in between. She's been awarded an artistic development grant from the Kalamazoo Arts Council to support her solo album to be released this fall. Samantha Cooper is a fiddler, vocalist, and educator who grew up in the Huron River watershed of Michigan. She's been a studio musician for over a dozen albums. She holds a BA in social ecology from the Lee Honors College at our brother university over across the street, Western, and has worked as an organizer, fundraiser, and performer for a diverse set of local cultural organizations. In April, Elisabeth and her friends spent 3 weeks in an artist residency with the Institute for Sustainable Living. Here they are, Bloodroot.
We said we never take more than we could make, more than we could make, more than we could make. The taste of the color of your touch on skin, the smell of the summer and the record spins, the joy of the child who learns to tend these insides of soil again, 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 again. Well, I come to you cold and dusty friend, to shake off the old road, take flight again. Is our love the tale told of how we tend these insides of soil again, 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 again. When I lie with you in slumber, I forget all my dreams. When I lie with you in slumber, I forget all my dreams. When I lie with you in slumber, I forget all my dreams. I forget all my dreams. I forget all my. Well, love comes and love goes, and I go home. And what does the love know that I don't know. Will the fields all fall fallow? Will we defend these insides of soil again, 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 again?
Slumber, I forget all my dreams. When I lie with you in slumber, I forget all my dreams. When I lie with you in slumber, I forget all my dreams. I forget all my dreams. I forget all my. We said we'd never take more than we could make, more than we could make, more than we could make.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the beautiful place that is Kalamazoo, the home of the Kalamazoo River. We're really lucky to be here. We're really lucky to have Bonnie Jo Campbell here to read with us tonight. And both these songs that we're singing tonight are off our upcoming album entitled Bloodroot. They were written last year, living really close to the Kalamazoo River and enjoying all the different seasons along it. This next song is called Welcome to the Rain, and it was written when it was raining a lot, and I needed to be reminded to still go outside. So I would like to also remind you that when you're in college, it's still important to go outside. And there's wonderful places to do that here.
Can I get one more F?
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
At the end of October, the rain starts a-falling, and we start wondering just how to stay outside, 'cause we don't wanna hide from the clouds and from the water, so we say hello to the rain. The rain carries our prayers to the river, and it washes our sorrows away. The rain says, remember, blue skies don't last forever. Say hello to today, and welcome to the rain. I was sitting on the front porch, washing the roots of dandelion. You know, the roots in the fall time, love. The rain, and the rain comes a-singing as its footsteps touch the ground. Each one ringing the sweetest sound. Rain says, offer your prayers to the river. Don't hold on so hard. Don't you go thinking that you are sinking. Don't worry, it's just me, rain. Don't worry, it's just me, rain. At night, as we lie sleeping, perennial roots lie dreaming of the leaves that they'll push up towards the sun. And the rain is a drum pounding out a dream beat, and in our sleep we sing the water song. Will you carry our prayers to the river and wash all our sorrows away? Will you help me remember nothing lasts forever? Welcome to the rain. Good night, good night, rain. When the spring comes, may all that you planted rise up and greet the sun. When the spring comes, may all that you planted rise up and greet the sun. When the spring comes, may all that you planted rise up and greet the sun. When the spring comes, may all that you planted rise up and greet the sun.
I needed that, did you? Yeah. Everybody breathe, huh? I'm Di Seuss. I teach in the English department here at K. I write poems, and I'm happy that I'm a friend and a colleague of Bonnie Jo Campell. Before I introduce her, I just want to call out a few names attached to much gratitude. Our president, Eileen Wilson Oyelaren, she's here. Our dean of students, Sarah Westfall. our provost, Mickey McDonald, and Dr. Zaid Pixley, Dean Pixley. Woo! They're a big part of why this is happening for us tonight. So thank you so much for your support of the arts and of first-year students. Bonnie Jo Campbell grew up in a house shaped like an H. How right that seems to me for how hale and hardy she is. How handy. She's a castrator of small pigs, a martial artist, kobudo, a self-appointed general in Southwest Michigan's war against the noxious invasive species known as garlic mustard. She's a cow milker, Jersey, a cook, deviled eggs with horseradish, they're good, I've eaten them, and a donkey farmer. If she's hungry, she eats. If she's thirsty, she hooks up the carboy to the heater belt and makes wine. She's happy, hopeful, hyper. A hell of a woman with iconic long blonde hair. She was a hitchhiker. Do not try this at home. She's hip. She scaled the Alps on a bike. She traveled with the Barnum and Bailey Circus selling snow cones. She's honored, having been nominated for the National Book Award in Fiction for her collection of stories, American Salvage. At the ceremony, she wore a borrowed Dior gown, all 6 feet of her. She's heroic, having been a tour guide in Russia while remaining a homebody, committed to her place, this place, here and now, a place in which you, members of the first-year class, are recent immigrants. Terry Tempest Williams writes, "Perhaps the most radical act we can commit is to stay home." That's a complicated charge, isn't it? For of course we're drawn over the borders of the familiar. We want to travel beyond, to move away. A core value at K is an international perspective. A core experience is studying away or abroad. Bonnie Jo certainly has wandered beyond her own familiar, from the circus to the University of Chicago to study philosophy. Then she got a master's in math and a master's in fine arts and creative writing. Maybe it's the coming together of those 3 seemingly dissimilar disciplines that made her so capable of bringing the Stark River and the struggling lives within it and along its banks to us. Novels require as much equational logic as creativity, whatever that is. Yes, Bonnie went out and away, but her imagination circled back to Southwest Lower Michigan and the land and the water, the people and the stories that made her. She's still literally right down in it. When I call her, she can't answer because she's up to her elbows in elderberries, mushing them into juice. This is Terry Tempest Williams again. I really believe that to stay home, to learn the names of things, to realize who we live among, the notion that we can extend our sense of community, our idea of community, to include all life forms, plants, animals, rocks, rivers, and human beings, then I believe a politics of place emerges where we're deeply accountable to our communities, to our neighborhoods, to our home. So what names did Bonnie Jo need to learn in order to give us that sprite, that nymph/nympho, the girl version of Huck Finn with the aim of Annie Oakley, that mysterious survivor, Margot Crane? What questions did she bring to the blank page when she began? Because all novels begin like college careers, with a question and an unwritten page. Come to think of it, isn't it audacious, ballsy, vulvic to face an empty page and to believe you can conjure all alone through mere words an entire world? You'll do the same, my friends, in one discipline or other when you do your senior individualized project. One place understood helps us understand all places better, writes Eudora Welty. Bonnie Jo writes of Kalamazoo County like Twain wrote of the Mississippi River, like Faulkner and Welty wrote of the South, like Thoreau wrote of Walden Pond, with deep, deep engagement. That's the delicious conundrum of knowing, isn't it? How wisdom is only wise if it's intimate, and yet its intimacies must be wisely applied to the larger world. In knowing this river, our river, which requires a boat and some oars, and then the willingness to dive and taste and swallow and brush up against a carp or two, for nothing can be known without nearly drowning. Bonnie Jo ends up finding her way to all rivers, or to river, capital R, the archetypal one that we all carry inside of us. Likewise, in giving us Margot, a girl so utterly herself that we can smell her, and it ain't Victoria's Secret pink perfume we're smelling. She also gives us our own wounded girl in boyhood, our own struggle to survive, our own heroic quest for freedom. Okay, I'm going to make a metaphoric leap here. We must do with this unwieldy thing called an education what Margot does with the dead buck that weighs too much for her to carry. She was squeezed on her belly all the way under the deer. She smelled its musk and urine. She smelled blood and earth and moss and sweat, felt its warm weight on her neck and back. When the deer was on her and the mud was in her nose, inside her jacket, down her pants and in her socks, she thought she would smother. She gathered all her strength, lifted her head up under the deer's chin, and slowly raised her body. Can you see that? Let's muddy ourselves with the conversations that don't allow for clear or easy answers. Let's face what we don't know about what we know. Let's not turn to books, to paraphrase Eudora Welty again, to correct or condone or comfort, but to make ourselves fully alive. Let's smell the blood and earth and moss and sweat of this place, this education, this life. Let's Bonnie Joify ourselves. Up to our elbows in river mud and elderberries. I know you want to. I want to. Bonnie Jo, will you come up and teach us how?
All right, well, I am here after that. Wow. I only wish that I had known the name of the band was going to be Bloodroot, and we would have put a picture of the beautiful bloodroot wildflower that grows in Michigan woods, which is a creamy white flower on a big fan of a green leaf, and it comes out before all the other wildflowers come out, and it disappears when the others come to crowd it. Well, it is a great pleasure to be here. Yeah, I couldn't wear my gown dye, the borrowed gown that I had. I had to return that to the author, Rhoda Jansen, who loaned it to me. So I'm back to my regular clothes, which I buy at the Tractor Supply Company. So it is an honor to be here at this school, which is providing Michigan's best undergraduate education. And this school beat out University of Michigan this year. I feel privileged to have a connection to Kalamazoo College, to consider members of the faculty and staff to be my colleagues and friends. And now it is an honor to meet all of you, the class of 2016. I have only one piece of advice. You know, you guys are probably getting advice all over the place, and you don't want my advice, but I'm going to give it anyway, because, you know, old ladies like me, I'm going to turn 50 this year, we can't resist giving advice. So I just want you to know, if you don't get an A grade in every single class, it's okay. A B is a really good grade at this school, so. I'm getting ready here to read aloud to you from the book that you've been reading, Once Upon a River. Giving readings is what authors do when they get out in public. Often we sit alone in our rooms and sit quietly, maybe in the evening, sit quietly again with a glass of wine. And so when we get out in public, we get a little excited. So what we're allowed to do is read from our books. And so we hope that hearing a little bit in the author's voice helps you gain some kind of a little extra understanding of the book. And well, we'll see. You can let me know if it works out. Let me tell you first a little bit about myself in the book, and I'm a little embarrassed because I wrote this up and then Di told much of my history. So I'll say I came from a small town in Michigan. I went to college at the University of Chicago and majored in philosophy. After that, I was considering, you know, what does one do with a degree in philosophy? Well, I was considering, there was this bait shop along the Kalamazoo River, and it was closed, so I thought maybe I could rent the bait shop and open a philosophy shop instead. I thought I would sell trinkets with little existentialist quotes on them, and maybe I could even dispense advice. But instead, I rode my bicycle to Boston. And while I was there, I started organizing and leading bicycle tours through Russia and Eastern Europe. And I did bike over the highest pass in the Swiss Alps. That was something I did. It took many days, and you know, I'll tell you the problem. It's really cold when you get up there. So there was a lot of cold. I only had like a 3-season sleeping bag, and suddenly I got up above like the snow, where the snow was. So I did hitchhike across the United States and Canada, and none of you should do it. Just so I told you, do not hitchhike. And I did join the circus. And then I got my master's degree in mathematics. And, well, the great thing about joining the circus is you get to live on the circus train. See, she didn't tell you that. I actually lived on a train for 5 months. It was very cool. And even though I was like chain smoking cigarettes, I was in great shape. Because I ran up and down the stairs of stadiums 8 hours a day with 20 pounds above my head. Imagine that. I was in great shape. And but then I got enrolled in a mathematics PhD program, and that's when I got really serious about writing fiction. So when I finally figured out how to get started with writing, I was 35 years old, and it turns out I didn't write about any of that crazy stuff I did. I didn't write about Europe, I didn't write about Russia, I didn't write about bicycling. It turned out that I wrote about things that took place right in my hometown. Isn't that strange? And the reason I tell you this is because I want you to all stay open to where your imagination is going to take you, whether that is someplace far or someplace very near home. So I'm going to read to you the first paragraph of this book, which you have all read. It's a rare pleasure to be here with all of you who have read my book. It's really nice. The Stark River flowed around the Oxbow at Murrayville the way blood flowed through Margot Crane's heart. She rode upstream to see wood ducks, canvasbacks, and ospreys, and to search for tiger salamanders in the ferns. She drifted downstream to find painted turtles sunning on fallen trees, and to count the herons in the heronry beside the Murrayville Cemetery. She tied up her boat and followed shallow feeder streams to collect crayfish, watercress, and tiny wild strawberries. Her feet were toughened against sharp stones and even broken glass. When Margot swam, she swallowed minnows alive and felt the stark river move inside her. Okay, look here. And this is, I'm not really a pro at this PowerPoint. Look, the light, I feel like there's light now. Okay. So here, I'm going to move this thing. Okay. You all got to see this book as a whole, complete thing, as a done deal. But a book is the result of many thousands of decisions. That first paragraph I read to you, I could talk about it for a half an hour and bore you silly, because every word was messed with before it landed where it did land. And I'm just showing you this here, just to show you this was the first paragraph at some point. I went up in my attic and found an old version of the book, just so I could take a picture of it and show you how different at one point the first paragraph was. I could write a chapter about my first paragraph. And as for the first chapter, I could write a book about it. Certainly, I could write a long, winding essay about the editing process. And also, I could tell you a lot about the importance of input by other people on my own creative projects. And if anybody wants to ask me about that tomorrow at the Q&A, 10 o'clock, you guys are all going to be there, right? 10 a.m. You can ask me then. And still, when I read you the paragraph just now, I added a word. Because even after the darn thing is published, I still find myself tinkering. I added the word even before broken glass. I said, even broken glass. And it's a tough thing. You ought to write these books and then close them and then go write new books. But for those of you who are interested in writing, and I think a number of you might be, fortunately you're in a good place for it, you may find that a paragraph, like a poem and like a person, can be infinite with possibilities. Some of you might ask about the cover of my book, because it's something that I can talk about graphically. I think that covers really matter. And I happen to like the cover of my book very much. And I want to show you guys something I've never shown anybody in public, okay? Please don't tell my publisher that I'm going to show you this, okay? Don't tell. I won't even tell you my editor's name, so just in case you know her, okay? Oh, no, that's me in too much plaid. I didn't want to show you that, no. But you guys know when you're doing a PowerPoint, it gets really exciting. You could just keep putting new photos in. I will, it's too much plaid. It's way too much plaid. My brother-in-law took that. These are my donkeys, Jack and Don Quixote. So I just wanted you to meet them before we go on. I didn't like the first cover of my book that they made. It was this cover with like the kids on it. So isn't that funny that could have been the cover of the book that you have in your hand? They sent me that cover and they said, "We hope you love it." And I said, "Margot would never throw her gun in the sand like that." And besides that, you can see that girl's underwear if you look. And then they said, "Well, how about this cover?" And I said, "No, because then people are going to say that's what Margot looks like." And I said, I don't want to know what Margot looks like. And I didn't think she looked like that anyway. Did you guys think she looked like that? No. So, and you guys know that authors don't have any say in their book covers? So I had to be very humble in saying, "Oh, please consider another book cover." So the next cover they The next cover they gave me was this crazy thing with the orange. And my agent loved it. "Oh, this is perfect. It's hard hitting." Luckily, the book reps said, "We're not selling this book. No, get another cover." So they gave me this cover. And I thought, well, it's lovely, it's pastoral. And then I thought, if it didn't say Once Upon a River, it could say, we're so sorry for your loss. So I begged them. I sent emails and I begged them. I said, please, just one more time, give it a try. So they came up with the cover that I loved. And then the British version of the book, effortlessly, they just came up with this fabulous cover. Isn't that fun? And I thought that was actually a very good cover. So I don't know if you guys know, it's so funny. You think about a book as this whole object, but there's so many decisions that go into making a book, what it is and what it looks like and what it ends up being. Somebody tomorrow is probably going to ask me if this book is autobiographical. Because often I find that, do any of you listen to too much Terry Gross on NPR? She always asks that. She's always like, well, is this story true? And I just want to let you know right now, the story, it's not a true story. I have never killed a man, nor have I damaged a man's most personal body parts. I did not run away to live in the wild. In fact, when I was 16, I was playing varsity volleyball and declaring myself a vegetarian, I think. So I don't like to fish. I can shoot a rifle, but not very well. However, I do love Annie Oakley. Oh, that wasn't the one? Okay, is that the one? Well, this is her gun. Okay, I may have to go back to it. So Annie Oakley, you know what? You can't get tired of looking at that chick. She is so cool. And then I recently found this photo of her when she was older. I actually love this one maybe even more. Isn't that great? That's Annie Oakley as like a 60-year-old lady. So, and isn't she great? And Annie Leibovitz, in her latest book of photographs, she did a book of photographs that was all Americana stuff, and one of her photographs is of this Annie Oakley heart target that a collector owns. So this was one of Annie Oakley's targets, and she signed it for the collector, and I think it's really beautiful. But you can see, okay, let's see if actually the gun comes up here as well. Oh, no, that's me with my gun, so. And you see I have the respectful gun things. Treat them with great safety. Okay, that's my mom, so we'll go back here. Okay, some of you last night asked, I was secretly here last night when the panel was here. It was so great to be incognito. And I'm glad you didn't know it was me because I think I was like talking during the presentation. So, folks on the panel talked about the gun a little bit, and this is the actual gun that I gave Margot. It's a lever action, and you can see that's why it has this little thing at the bottom where you'd actually pull it out to work the action of the gun. And this is a more old-fashioned gun. A lot of guns now are bolt action, which means you load them from the side. So this is the lever action gun. You can see the squirrel on the handle, and that was on Margot's gun. And it actually has a chrome-plated, everything is chrome-plated, except I think there's a little bit of gold plating on the trigger. So some of you mentioned the gun last night and asked about it, and feel free to ask me more tomorrow at the Q&A. But right now what I'll tell you is that the gun was an important part of this story. But maybe, and she stole the gun from her uncle who took something from her. But maybe more important than the gun itself was Margot's skill in using it. Now that skill didn't come magically. That skill came from the time she was young. She took a shooting class and she worked at it. And she worked at shooting targets, and she got more accurate, and she kept shooting. And I hope you noticed it all through the book. Her shooting is not so much, it's a little bit of it as a gift, but mostly it's a skill that she worked at and she earned. She earned her ability with shooting that gun. And much of her ability to succeed as a human being was actually her having that ability to use that gun, because she was able to feed herself in the wild. She was able to feel that she could protect herself in the wild. And I think a lot of us are fascinated by Annie Oakley just because she was so damn good at something. Wouldn't we all give everything to be that good at something? So I think as a writer, like, I aspire. Annie Oakley grew up a Quaker. She was never supposed to pick up a gun. And nobody knows, why she picked it up to begin with and why she was so good at it. But I just want you to see that even though part of it is that having this gun is almost magical and it's almost, this gun is a talisman, but it's mostly her working at it and her hard work that made her the shooter she is, which is so important in the gun. And you guys know you have to be careful when you put guns in a book, because America is filled with people who really know their guns. So I had to be very careful. Same with cars. If you're going to do anything with cars and your gun, you've got to make sure you really know it. But it is a very pretty rifle. And my husband did buy me, not this same rifle, the one not with the squirrel and the chrome, but after I finished writing the book, my husband did buy me a Marlin 39A 22 rifle. So I can shoot targets at it. And just so you know, I don't shoot critters. Okay, we'll go by this. So, okay, we're trying to be Charlie's Angels in this picture, and so I know it's kind of silly, but I also wanted to say on the subject of a book not being autobiographical, that I was not raised by wolves, but by a mother who remained very present until I went away to college, at which time she rented out my room. So this is Mom. However, I should confess that my mother, for a time, skinned critters for a living. So she sometimes skinned critters to feed us. She always fed us something that she called goulash. We didn't know what was in it. So, and I will say that I'm a forager, and one of my interests in writing this book was to try to puzzle out whether I could survive on the river, or, in the wild. And that was, I still don't know if I could, but it was really fun to try to figure out how a girl could make her way. And I was just gonna say that on one day when I happened to be out and about, recently I picked up that puffball mushroom. So in the book you saw a puffball. That's what a puffball looks like. I mean, it doesn't look like anything else, so you won't mistake it for anything. And these are pawpaws, which are a native fruit. And I ate all the rest of them, but I have this little one if anybody wants to come up and look at it afterwards. And also, I brought this Osage orange. Oh, I was trying to get some pawpaws, and these cows came at me. They came like rushing across the field, like the ground was like thundering. And I was like frantically trying to pick these pawpaws up like as fast as I could. And finally my husband, who's like holding the gate, he's like, you better get out here. So it's good. And the fence was electrified, so I had to be kind of careful. So, but in case you were wondering, Disus was talking about elderberries. These are elderberries. And you don't really want to eat them, but you can make wine out of them. So, and that's an Osage orange, so if anybody wants to smell one, they can come up and smell it afterwards. Okay, well, enough of that stuff. I'm going to read you a little bit more from a little bit of this book here that you've been reading to see if you get anything more from it than when you read it yourself. And I'm going to start over because I told you guys how hard I worked on that paragraph, so I'm going to read it again. The Stark River flowed around the Oxbow at Murrayville the way blood flowed through Margot Crane's heart. She rode upstream to see wood ducks, canvasbacks, and ospreys, and to search for tiger salamanders in the ferns. She drifted downstream to find painted turtles sunning on fallen trees and to count the herons in the heronry beside the Murrayville Cemetery. Do you see how I brought death right into that first paragraph? I'll tell you what I did in this first chapter is I presented paradise and then right away I trashed it. That's what we writers do. Because if we left you guys wallowing around in paradise, you'd get a little bored. It's a problem with paradise, I guess. She tied up her boat and followed shallow feeder streams to collect crayfish, watercress, and tiny wild strawberries. Her feet were toughened against sharp stones and even broken glass. When Margot swam, she swallowed minnows alive and felt the stark river move inside her. She waded through serpentine tree roots to grab hold of water snakes and let the river clean the wounds from the non-venomous bites. She sometimes tricked a snapping turtle into clamping its jaws down hard on a branch so she could carry it home to Grandpa Murray. He boiled the meat to make soup and told the children that eating snapping turtle was like eating dinosaur. Margot was the only one the old man would take along when he fished or checked his animal traps, because she could sit without speaking for hours in the prow of the River Rose, his small teak boat. Margot learned that when she was tempted to speak or cry out, she should instead be still and watch and listen. The old man called her Sprite or River Nymph. Her cousins called her Nympho, though not usually within the old man's hearing. Margot, named Margaret Louise, and her cousins knew the muddy water and the brisk current, knew the sand and silt between their toes, scooped it into plastic cottage cheese tubs and sherbet buckets, and dribbled it through their fingers to build sagging stalagmites and soggy castles. They hollowed out the riverbanks, cut through soil and roots to create collapsing caves and tunnels. If any kid stood too long in a soft spot and sank above his knees, he just had to holler and somebody pulled him free. They spent summers naked or nearly naked, harvesting night crawlers from the mossy woods and frogs' eggs from the goo in underwater snags. They built rafts from driftwood and baling twine. They learned to read upon the surface of the water evidence of distress below. Once when Margot was 8 and her favorite cousin Junior was 9, they rescued an uncle who'd fallen in drunk. They all fished the snags at the edges of the river for bluegills, sunfish, and rock bass, though they avoided the area just downstream of the Murray metal fabricating plant, where a drain pipe released a mixture of wastewater, machine oil, and solvents into the river. Some of the fish there had strange tumors, bubbled flesh around their lips, a fraying at their gills. On certain windy days, the clay-colored smoke from the shop wafted along the river, reached them on their screen porches, and even when they closed their windows, the smoke entered their houses through floorboards and the gaps around their doors. The Murrays were a stubborn tribe, and Bernard Crane was no less stubborn for being born the bastard son of Dorothy Crane and Old Man Murray during his bout of infidelity, forgiven in time by a wife who, despite or perhaps because of her forgiving nature, died young. The old man begged Dorothy Crane to give their child his last name, but she put on the birth certificate, father unknown. Some said Dorothy was part Indian, and that was why Bernard was so small, and others said that she had begrudged her baby sufficient milk at her breast, because the old man would not leave his lawful wife, while others, including Cal Murray, denied that Bernard was in any way a Murray. Years later, however, when Bernard Crane, whom everyone called simply Crane, and his wife Luann gave birth to a beautiful green-eyed daughter, a spell of reconciliation was cast across the river, and all the Murrays claimed Margot. The girl's mother even enjoyed the favor of the other women for a while. More often, they referred to Luann as a free spirit. They did not mean it as a compliment. When the weather allowed, Margot and her cousins swam all day long. Even when drought made the river shallow enough to walk across, they swam to the Big Murray farmhouse on the north bank, where Aunt Joanna was hanging laundry or baking bread, and where Uncle Cal might let them shoot skeet with shotguns or plink targets with .22 rifles. They swam straight across to the heavily shaded crane house where Luann was often lying flat in a reclining chair at the end of the floating dock in the only sun on the place, wearing an unfastened bikini. Luann lay browning like one of Joanna's loaves of bread, lifting her head and opening her eyes only to drink the watered-down white wine she kept in a mason jar full of melting ice. Her scent of cocoa butter drifted out onto the water, and the boys could not take their eyes off her. In the evenings, Margot rowed, swam, or floated home, and her mother woke up, anticipated the girls' return, and stood, perhaps unsteadily, on the dock, holding a towel for Margot, her favorite towel, oversized, with a pattern of jungle greens. Margot's teeth would chatter as her mother wrapped and hugged her. Only then would Margot smell the sweet breath of wine inside the cloud of cocoa butter. Luann would say, "Hold on, Margaret Louise," as they made their way in an embrace down the dock, along the bank, and into the house. They checked Margot for bloodsuckers on the screen porch and doused any stragglers with salt. After they had both showered, Luann might go to bed with her bottle of wine and watch TV, or begin her 12-hour sleep. But Margot curled on the couch and waited for her father to get home from second shift at Murray Metal Fabricating, sometimes thumbing through her book about Annie Oakley, whose somber face she never tired of studying. Annie looked so natural with her rifles and shotguns. And it seemed to Margot that any girl would want a long gun at her side. When she'd said that to her ma, Luann had said tiredly that she didn't know how Annie Oakley could have fired so many times without killing anybody, without killing the whole damn lot of them. And Margot hadn't brought it up again. After a big storm or a sudden thaw, the river could become a passionate surge, dragging along debris from upstream, ill-secured boats or pieces of floats and docks that had been dashed against trees. All manner of stuff might be dragged up onto the riverbank, 55-gallon drums, mildewed buoys on nylon ropes, animal carcasses, and the floodwaters washed away what the Murrays had not secured or could not secure. Sand from the sandbox, pig shit from the half-dozen pigs in the pasture, garden stakes and tomato cages left out from the previous summer, toys and dog dishes, thousands of shotgun shells and bullet casings from beside the barn. The yearly flood scrubbed the muskrat caves, drowned the moles, carried away burn barrels, wore away land, and swept clear portions of the earth. One February, after an early snowmelt, the cranes lost a whole cord of firewood that was stacked too close to the water's edge. The death of Margot's grandpa when she was 14 hit the whole family like one of those late winter floods, chilling everything, washing away that old generation and whatever invisible glue and strings had been holding the Murrays together. Margot had stayed by Grandpa's sickbed on the sun porch whenever they'd let her. After the funeral, she went out with Uncle Cal, loaded his lever-action .22 Marlin like Annie Oakley's with 15 long rifle cartridges, threaded her arm into the sling, and took aim through the iron sights. After her first shot went awry, Cal suggested she sit cross-legged and pull the sling tighter. The following 14 shots hit the paper target just left of center in a tight cluster. 12 of the shots created a single hole, a little more than a half an inch across. "What the hell was that?" Cal said, running his finger over the torn paper. "I've never shot like that in my life. That's unholy." Uncle Cal claimed credit for teaching her to shoot. But while Margot had felt his guidance, she had felt just as strongly the guidance of the gun itself. It held her steady, and then sadness perfected her aim. When Cal Murray took over as president of Murray Metal Fabricating, he called upon his sons to work in the summers rather than exploring the river all day. At about this time, Margot's mother began to put on makeup and disappear for hours in the afternoons. She always returned home at dusk until one July evening when Margot found herself alone at the dock. Her oversized minnow neck contained a giant puffball as white as the moon, bigger than her own head. Margot rose from the river, stood on the dock holding the skull-white mushroom, which she would slice and fry for dinner. The Crane's little house was dark. When she turned on the kitchen light, she found the note on the table. She read and reread it, but could not crack its code. So many times, Luann had said that she could not bear living in this place, but there she had always been. Margot scratched her ankle and found a fat bloodsucker. She didn't have the patience to shrivel it with salt. Instead, she took a butcher knife, smashed the end of the wooden handle into the creature's head, and twisted until the bloody pulp fell onto the kitchen tile. All right, so thank you very much. I think we're going to finish this up now and then go do a little sign-in action where I'll just see if there's any other pictures you can't live without. That's my grandparents' cottage on the river. There's more river. That's what people do. That's my husband with his long legs there. Isn't that great to just have an excuse to look for old photos? And then you have these old family photos. And there's the river, so I think that's it. So thank you very much, and I'll sign your books for you, and I'll see you tomorrow where you have lots of good questions.
Just a quick announcement that give Bonnie Jo time to get over to Hicks, and she'll sign your books if you'd like to have them signed. And then you'll be talking about the book in small groups in the morning, and then we'll do a Q&A at 10 tomorrow in the chapel. Thanks for your attention. I'm excited to meet you all, and take care.